recording. And I will officially call the September 24th, 2020 meeting of the Home Education Advisory Council to order at 3:36 p.m. I'm just going to go across my screen. I'm going to take this off.
Yes,
Sorry, I just remembered. Thanks. I'm going to go across my screen as I see people. I'm Catherine Michelotti, chairman. We have Senator Ruth Ward. We have Stephanie Marsh. We have attorney Christopher Bond. We have Katie McLaughlin, Michelle Lavelle, Ann Lane, Jennifer Pereira, Fred Fraser, Angela Mason, and George Durazio are currently in attendance. Welcome, everyone. I apologize for the typo on the agenda. We're actually going to discuss the June minutes and approve them rather than the May minutes, since we did have a June meeting. So I apologize for that. Fred, would you mind giving us a brief review of the June minutes, since I did not send them out in an email?
I don't have them right. I'd have to go into my computer and pull them out. Do you want me to do that?
You know what I'll do is I will try to pull them up on my computer instead.
Am I remembering right that you sent us preliminary minutes? And we may have commented, but they seem fine, if I remember.
In June, yes, I did send them out.
Right.
Yes, and so I actually just found them. I can read them briefly. In attendance: Catherine Michelotti, Fred Fraser, Jen Pereira, Steph Marsh, George Durazio, Katie McLaughlin, and an observer from the public. I called the meeting to order at 3:38. We read the May minutes and passed them, and the chairman's report involved the listening session hosted by Senator Deitch, as well as the Cato debate that was supposed to occur on June 15th involving the Harvard professor regarding homeschooling, and that did not actually end up happening. The Seacoast Christian Home Educators Association had an informal home education session. NHHC proposed the waiver to postpone the annual evaluation due to COVID, and it was now easily accessible. Not proposed, excuse me, I'm misreading that. Said it was now easily accessible, and we linked the link on the actual education.nh.gov website. From Catholics United, Jen announced that she's now the president. George Durazio had comments on Senator Deitch's session. They were on the CUHE website. There was also the virtual homeschooling conference happening from June 25th to June 27th. In new business, I had announced that Voyager's homeschool co-op in Chelmsford, Mass. Was closing their space, and Latitude Learning was awaiting a decision. I presented the rules for home education, and we discussed and then approved and voted on them. And we adjourned around 4:30, and I would like to know if there are any questions or comments on the June minutes. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
I move that we accept the minutes as written.
All right, Steph moves.
I second.
And Fred seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
I think I have to abstain. I don't think I was there. At least you didn't read my name.
All right, the minutes are passed. Thank you very much. For the chairman's report, and there's, well, I read the annual report in July to the Board of Education, and it was approved by them. There was not a whole lot of discussion about it. The Board of Education public hearing is October 8th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. via Zoom. I have not seen the agenda yet, but as soon as I see it, I will make sure to send it out to everyone. This is the public hearing on the rules that we approved, ED 315. So please send out that information to the people in your respective groups so they can attend if they would like and give commentary if they would like. The rules document, proposed rules, is linked on the Board of Education website, so please share that with them so they know how they feel about what they're looking at.
What was the time again, Kitty? Sorry.
That's okay. It's October 8th, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m.
So we'll have a better sense of if it's morning or afternoon once they put out an agenda, right?
Yes, I think so. Anne, do you have an agenda yet for that particular meeting?
No, we have not received it, but I'm more than happy to forward it to you as soon as I do, in the event that you haven't received it, as quickly as I get it.
Thank you so much. I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, will do.
Something that I'd like to bring up, and I'm sure we'll be discussing, is some of the issues that we're having with SAUs, whether it's the time frame that they are sending back letters of acknowledgement to new homeschoolers. Sometimes there are dates on those letters that specify the 2020-2021 school year, and when that is brought to the attention of the administrators or the superintendents, there is misunderstanding happening, that, you know, we thought it was only for this school year, or of course we have to do this school year because it's going to return to normal next year. Whatever it is, a lot of districts are unaware that the law changed in 2012 and they need their homeschool policies updated, and they need sometimes a phone call or from either someone on the HEAC, or the commissioner has also been making phone calls, as well as Stephen Berwick, and trying to encourage districts to return letters of acknowledgement within the 14 days that are stipulated by statute. There are also some districts are making extra requests saying, oh, we need to see your credentials, or we need to see your curriculum. And these are also requests that are going beyond the law. So these are things we're dealing with, and I would like to discuss releasing a technical advisory that would hopefully bring everybody up to speed on the rule changes, the law changes, and what is expected of them as a reporting agency. So we can talk about that. For equal access clarification, as far as during the time of COVID, having, you know, our students, there's been more difficulty, pushback from individual schools as well, saying we don't want extra students coming in. We have our cohorts formed. We don't want students coming in for classes, for specials, for sports, etc. So, and special ed, of course, is a whole another department of that, a whole nother vein. So we can discuss that as well. And then the third thing I wanted to talk about was homeschool credit being recognized by especially high schools, as, you know, for high schoolers, freshmen, sophomores who are homeschooling this year, they're, right now as it stands, their districts have complete and total jurisdiction on what to accept as credits, what to accept towards the GPA. And I would like to discuss maybe finding a way to standardize that. Maybe can kids test in to certain classes to have things accepted? Can we find some sort of way to get credits accepted for these homeschoolers, so they're not ending up just having a biology class that they took at home counting as an elective rather than a science? So these are some things I would like to talk about. I guess we can start with issues from SAUs. I have sent several letters to the commissioner and to Stephen Berwick and to Attorney Bond to let them know just lists of SAUs that we have that are not complying and what they are doing. And what I would like to know is, has anyone else heard of specific SAUs that are not complying? And if you don't want to say it now, you're welcome to message it to me, but to have a list of SAUs that we can reach out to and help them become compliant, basically.
Kitty, would you please remind me of what SAU stands for?
So it's your school district.
Okay,
I think it's school advisory unit or something.
Yeah, school advisory unit.
thank you.
We haven't been getting, as far as I know, a lot of reports from specific SAUs about not complying, sending the letter of acknowledgement back. I can address more about the question about homeschoolers receiving credit in high school, but
Okay.
I don't really have anyone to add to the list. That over the years has been the kind of thing where coalition board members or HEAC board members would often just jump right ahead and just call the SAU, say, I'm on the blah, blah, blah. I understand this is an issue and confusing. Could we talk about it? And it usually fixes the problem right away, especially if you can refer them right to the rules and law. What I would say about a technical advisory is I almost suggest that we homeschooler members of the HEAC pre-write a very simple point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4. I find that most of these technical advisories are a couple of pages of long sentences.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get read, they don't get understood, and they don't get used. And it just needs to be stated in plain, simple English. Homeschoolers will send you letters. The only children they have to do it for are this age. They do not have to have any particular qualifications. They do not to submit a scope and sequence, even though that used to be in the law. They do not have to homeschool a certain number of hours a day. They do not have to homeschool a certain number of days a year. Blah, 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 blah. You could copy it off our website practically, but that is my worry about technical advisories, to be honest.
Right. I myself am concerned because we've definitely made some phone calls to the superintendents, but when I make phone calls and whomever it is that answers the phone says, oh, that's not the information I have. I don't think I have to send a letter without a date on it, etc. So there's a breakdown in communication somewhere for sure. So
well, the secretaries will always be defensive and the superintendents will always be scared. I usually get it bumped up pretty fast, pretty high. I say, I need to talk to this person right away. I'm a member of, before I was on the HEAC, it was just I'm on the board of this and this and this. Mm-hmm. Be confident, people. You're the ones who are right.
Right. And when you have the law on your side, sometimes it's just a matter of, hey, by the way.
Yeah, you don't have to be nasty, but you do have to not be, oh, well, maybe I was wrong. No, right. You're not wrong.
No.
You're wrong. You've been doing this for whatever. I mean, for me, I've been able for a long time to say 20 blah, blah, blah years. But even if you don't, you just say, no, I've been homeschooling several years here. I'm on the board of the blah, blah, blah. I'm on the Home Education Advisory Council at the Department of Education. I know it's confusing, but there is a mistake here and we need to fix this or else the legal action is going to be taken against your school district. And they go, or you're going to get fired. It's the other not spoken statement there.
Right. Yeah, I've found that quoting the law has really helped.
Yeah.
So I just
have it right in front of you. Say RSA blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we always had to do it years and years ago. Remember, they had no internet to go click on the law.
Right. Yeah, it helps to know it very well. Chris, did you have?
Yeah, so the commissioner has asked me to prepare a technical advisory and he wants to issue one either tomorrow or Monday. So
wonderful.
Certainly happy to collect input from you. I hear loud and clear the message that it doesn't need to be overly long or complex. And I'm proud to say that I've authored several page technical advisories in my brief tenure here. So I can do it. I can good brief. I do think we want to have almost like a, I think we'll have like a brief just overview, like Stephanie has suggested, of the requirements. And I think the commissioner envisions having almost like a Q&A section with some of the common mistakes that we're seeing and just say, you can't do this and you can't do this and you can't do this because, and I see Susan has posted in the comments that people are receiving letters back from SAUs that say, well, this acknowledgement is good for this time period. And that's a common one. So what I've had Stephen Berwick, I've had him pull the policies on home education programs from every SAU that he's reached out to in the last couple of weeks. And I think it's a dozen or so that he's given me, and almost every single one of them is out of date. It's older than 2012. So that's kind of what we lead with. But some of the common ones I've seen, and what I hope to kind of get from this call is if we could flesh out some other common mistakes that we're seeing. But the policy being out of date, a lot of districts are purporting to require a continuation notice year after year, and or they're doing what Susan has noted and indicating that the acknowledgement is only good for a set period of time. There seems to be a lot of strange requirements around curricular and co-curricular access that they're sort of adding on. That's another one I thought we wanted to hit. A lot of them, their policies are silent on how quickly they'll turn around a response, and I think that as a best practice, they should have the 14 days in there. Let me see, what else did I have? A lot of, well, it stems from having old policies, but there's a lot of references to old rules that are no longer in place. So those are some of the issues that we've seen that we want to make sure our TA addresses, in addition to just setting forth the very simple requirements. But I wanted to know if you guys have encountered any other common themes among SAUs in trying to add additional requirements that aren't based in the statute.
I have one particular district that I got a call on, that I got a call from a homeschooler, but I haven't had a chance to call them back, and I want to call this district and see what the situation is there before I say, yeah, this district is messed up.
Okay.
I should be doing that probably tomorrow. But they went way, way, way beyond what even the previous law required. So
Yeah, I found one policy where I don't remember what SAU it was, but it said that if the parent wants to file a homeschool education plan, they have to schedule a meeting with the superintendent. Like, oh, that's coming out. So yeah, and I tend to agree with Stephanie that the best approach is very simply setting forth the requirements and just indicating that any requirements beyond these are not applicable. But then I do think we want to hit some of the common themes we're seeing too, just because they're so prevalent. And I think a lot of schools are taking this attitude that, well, there's a lot of people filing homeschool education plans this year because things are weird, but next year we'll be back to normal. And
Right.
there's this sort of assumption that you're really only doing this temporarily because of the COVID pandemic, but that's not, it's perpetual until it's revoked. So we just got to continue to educate them. And I know part of the reason the commissioner wants to get this out so quickly is because he wants the SAUs to stop, of course, but it is taking up a lot of Stephen Berwick's time. As you can imagine, he's getting a lot of complaints from parents of kids who are in the districts too at this time. So anything we could do to kind of help the districts get back on track with this as quickly as possible, we want to do. So I appreciate the offer to send us a draft. And if you want to turn a draft around, today and tomorrow kind of a thing, we'd be happy to take a look at it. But I know the commissioner wants to act really quickly.
Great.
I have found, I ran a website, the coalition website for 20 something years, is that often, maybe rather than a Q&A or other approaches, but we found we had to keep adding to our website the things that you are not required to do. So that's why I was listing, you're not required to have certain credentials, you're not required to teach a certain number of days a year or within school hours, because perhaps it's because we know these are rules in other states and people hear from other states. So we know these are the questions we typically get. So it may help the school district to know not only what is required, but very specifically what's not. And the reason the out of date thing, in case the time frame isn't completely clear to you, it's in 2012, we switched to one-time notification. So if anything's before that. And they used to have handbooks and online things, and they haven't updated it. That's also the year that evaluations didn't have to be turned in directly to the PA. And 2006 is when we changed from having to submit a scope and sequence, which was a very wide open thing. You could say, I'm going to be unschooling using books from the library, but you still had to submit something to say what your intention was. So that's why those do keep popping up.
Okay, well, that's helpful. And I think really districts should understand that if their policy is older than 2012, it's almost certainly got incorrect information in it, and they should update it.
Yes. And along the lines of many superintendents believing that it is just for this year and then people will return to schools, they have been asking to have private meetings with families and phone calls with families saying, oh, we'll be following up with, our secretary will be following up with you or whatever, saying, let's make sure that maybe you don't want to homeschool this year. Let's see if we can't work something out, rather than just saying, oh, you've declared that you're going to homeschool. Thanks for letting us know. So they're putting extra things in the letter of intent, so that's one thing that's for this year.
One thing has to be said. When people call me and they say, we are only intending to do it this year, and it's high school we're talking about, and then my child is going back in. Mm-hmm. And we've said this long before COVID, long before any of these things. It would be, we're traveling in Europe for a year, and then my child's going back to school. Mm-hmm. In that case, when it's really only 1 year, it can be very helpful, not a requirement, but we do say, you may want to talk with the school district then, so that if you're saying, okay, we're going to be doing Algebra 2 and we're continuing Spanish and we're doing this, they'll say, okay, I see you've got that. That's a good plan. This will all work when they come back. To just assume everything will be fine, and of course we'll get into it more when we talk about competencies later. Mm-hmm. It's hard. I do advise parents who know their intention is to go back to the public school to work with them.
Absolutely. On paper, you should still follow the law, but it's definitely advisable to have conversations before you do things like that to make sure that your student isn't behind where they need to be, credit-wise, competency-wise, etc. That makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with what Steph just said, because I would recommend to people the same thing. If they're only planning to do it for a year, talk to the district to make sure you're going to be all set with the credit so they can graduate.
Right. Absolutely. Chris, did you have something else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's useful context that Stephanie just gave. And I think there's a line between, I understand it being a best practice for a parent maybe to keep in touch with the district if their intention is to return to the district the following year. Mm-hmm. But we want to just be careful that districts aren't hounding families who've made this decision, because the schools, of course, want to get that funding that comes with the student. But I think in crafting the TA, I want to be careful not to push so hard on the leave them alone. The districts feel like they can't engage with parents who are reaching out to them for that exact purpose. So I'll try to see if I can find some language that kind of indicates that at the parent's prerogative, it's perfectly fine to communicate, but there shouldn't be any mandated check-ins coming from the district side.
Right, absolutely.
Yes.
Has anyone found anything different in letters of acknowledgement that we haven't covered or touched on yet? No? Okay.
Well, only that one district that I was referring to, but I want to get a hold of them tomorrow. And
yeah, George, if you're able to reach them, I think you have my email address, or at least Kitty does. Yeah. Means whatever you find out, let me know so we can try to incorporate that if it's something that needs to go in.
Yeah.
Yes, I will do that.
All right. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Because I think there's going to be quite a bit of discussion on the next two topics, I'd like to have members give their reports first, and then we can go into new business because I have a feeling we're going to have some things to propose. So I'll just go down the line here. Steph, how are things?
Well, the two things I mentioned one anyway to everybody to have on the agenda, and I could see you had it.
Yes.
Questions about students who plan to re-enter high school or are re-entering in one district in particular. And also has come up the question of students having a hard time finding a place where they can take PSATs. Mm-hmm. And I saw HSLDA just wrote something about that too, but we had run into this beforehand. Sometimes it's simply that the schools themselves are deciding we're just not going to offer a PSAT this year. But
Right.
those are the two things floating around in our discussion. Otherwise, tons of people are homeschooling. Many people are saying this finally gave me the push I needed to try it. Particularly those with high school students are a little more, I'm not sure if we'll stay with this or not, but it's interesting and encouraging to see. So.
And have you come up with any solutions as far as the PSATs or any like buildings that will offer it separately, or what have you found?
One thing I would like to know is, does New Hampshire have any sort of state law that says school districts are required to seat homeschool students at PSATs? I doubt we do. I saw that was something in like the Texas law. As far as the re-entering high school, I can talk about how they used to refer us to the competencies. It's still on the website.
Right.
The DOE website. That'll probably come up in that discussion. So just the coalition is fielding tons of questions and trying to get lots of info out there. A few concerns about the going back for high school, and some people with questions about PSATs.
Okay.
So that's it.
Thank you. Chris, do you know if there's any sort of New Hampshire law that is specific to making sure homeschoolers get to take the PSATs, or would that fall under, not making anything more restrictive to homeschoolers than public schoolers as far as regular law?
Whether that's a curricular or co-curricular activity. I don't know off the top of my head. I wouldn't surprise me if there is something directly on point in the statute, but I'm not aware of anything without doing some research.
Okay. Thank you. Fred, how are things at Thomas More?
We're doing well. We're in session in person, and we have no COVID cases. But otherwise, other than that, nothing to report.
Sometimes no news is good news.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you. Jen.
Yeah, we've continued to have increasing numbers in membership, and we've been talking to people about how to notify the basics, what's required. That's mostly what they want to know. Right. And a lot of them have young kids too, and they're just new to this. So like, what am I doing? And yeah, some of our activities, I mean, not as a group, but that are under, that we know of from our network, at different parishes, they're able to resume with the restrictions, but we've heard that one of the co-ops in the Nashua area, they just felt it was too difficult with all the masks and restrictions, so they're not going to do it this year.
Okay. We've heard that a lot too. Co-ops are taking a year off. And have you gotten any feedback from your homeschoolers about districts who have been including, I saw that you put one in the chat, aside from the open-ended date thing, have you found anything else?
No, they haven't reported anything else.
That's good. Okay. Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
Hi, Mike. Welcome.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I'm surprised to hear some of the districts are making life difficult because there's plenty to handle in the system. Really have our hands full right now. But I haven't heard anything about districts or statewide issues. I know in Wyndham, the kids just came back to the high school for the first time today, and we keep getting a couple of cases every once in a while. I don't know if you've seen that in the news, but so we've been like in put out fire mode for a couple of weeks, and but that's about it. So it's a lot of just trying to figure out how to do this and have kids in school some of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's huge. And yeah, especially when I've seen in the paper that Wyndham has had a few cases and is going back and forth. So kudos to you.
Well, so far so good. It hasn't spread rapidly anywhere. So That's good.
Yeah, that is good. Did they end up deciding to bring back sports?
Yeah,
Well-
today was the first day of tryouts.
Wonderful.
We'll see what happens with that.
Wish you
Great.
luck.
Yeah, thanks.
That's great news. Thank
Yeah.
It
you.
is.
Appreciate everything that the schools are doing to try to get kids back in school, because most kids, you know, they're not going to be able to homeschool and their parents at work, and it's a tough
Right.
thing.
Yeah, it's tough.
I guess if I just a little commentary, it's been surprising for me to see how difficult this has been for kids who've grown up in school to then just be with their families all the time. And you know, there's all kinds of talk about mental health issues and things like that. I haven't heard that among the homeschooling families we know. It just seemed slightly inconvenient, and activities got canceled for the kids, or co-op got canceled, but it wasn't this whole flip of their social life. So it's just been interesting to watch that.
Mhm.
And it's like families are being forced to be families when they're not really particularly well practiced at it.
And to be trying to distance learn and work from home while attempting to re-navigate the family
Yes.
ties. It's a very difficult, it's a challenge.
Yeah, that's a hard situation.
Yeah, everyone's trying to find new boundaries everywhere.
And I think kids being sent home with just boring work to just do or something on the computer, that's why I said at the beginning of this is not homeschooling, because we would fall in the same problem with our kids as homeschoolers, except we're
Sure.
doing what the teachers do. We're cutting up cardboard boxes and making castles and tasting 6 different varieties of apples and doing the science experiment, and the thing that the classroom teacher would be doing. So just
Right.
sitting at home and doing workbooks is really boring. And we agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Indeed. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Everybody's all out of order. Okay. Katie.
Okay. Hey, I don't know that I have much to update, and my house can break out in loud noises in an instant. But yeah, just want to reiterate that I felt, as I talked to so many people over the summer and then going into the fall, as they were really wrestling with making their decisions, I think there was a good understanding that like elementary school and middle school didn't matter quite so much for those competencies or for credit. But in years past, even just in my area here on the Seacoast, one neighboring high school compared to another would have completely different rules and policies for accepting high school credit or not. And I just watched one particular friend navigate it in a completely unfair way. And I felt what she had to deal with showed me that I think the schools were applying much stricter. That particular school was being much more strict with her as a homeschooler than they would have been with any kid who maybe moved into the district. So, you know, as far as giving credit for a diploma, giving class ranking, GPA, you know, that sort of a thing. So, and as I talked to people this summer, I felt like it's a really tough thing to talk to parents about who are thrown into this situation, realizing that they don't want their kid will not do well in the hastily thrown together public school online forum. You know, they will not do well there, but they feel like that's their only option because their kid needs credit because they're going to re-enter the high school next year. So I'm not one to want like a statewide policy necessarily, but maybe districts, and they need to know that this was a very tough situation. And if there's probably going to be students that do re-enter next year, and they're going to say, well, I did that and I did that and I did that. And I certainly wouldn't want to. It would be really sad that they could possibly be told, well, you will never get a diploma from our high school with those classes.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something we're trying to avoid. And I think if we're proactive about it, we might be able to influence how those high school students return to school next year. And maybe we can, you know, I don't know about a statewide policy, but at least something. to put out there. And I don't have the answer yet, but we have enough brilliant minds here that I'm sure we'll come up with something.
Yeah.
Thank you, Katie. Senator Ward.
I don't really have anything to report. I told you I would like to have the connection in Keene,
Yes.
and let's see what else. I'm waiting for the report. The group that has been working on adequate funding for schools. I'm waiting for that report to show up. And then we just continue the usual stuff about should the money go with the child? That's always an interesting thing. I'm actually meeting with a group, a couple of people from Hillsdale College. It's a very small group of us to talk about charter schools and get some more information on that. So I can report on those things to you if you're interested in the future.
Yes, very much.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. Wonderful. I have noticed in Facebook discussions, new homeschool parents are saying, "Oh, well, can I get some of my taxes back to buy some curriculum or to help me out with someone to watch my kids?" And I
Right.
said, that would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
Right, and that's something that has to change.
Yes.
It's going to be long, slow, but it's we have to look at it. It's totally different than what we have up to this point.
I find that there's also some misunderstanding. A lot of people are worried that we would defund the other kids who could not homeschool or choose another school. And so explaining the difference between the town taxes and the state taxes and what goes where and what gets kept and what gets, lost or follows what would follow the child. Just having more information out there would also really, I think, help people make a more informed decision.
Well, for me, the most important thing is that whatever is best for the child, whatever school, whatever kind of educational system, it shouldn't be that you have to go to the monopoly, and if you don't, you're out of luck. So if they started to look at the kids and their needs before looking at some of the other things, then I think we've at least come somewhere. But it's, like I said, it's going to take a while.
It's going to take a while.
Yep.
Yeah, anything that we can help with. And I would definitely like to stay informed of the meetings that you have, regardless of if it's just homeschooling. Just personally, any sort of school choice meetings I'm excited to hear about.
Right. I'll keep you informed.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Senator Ward, the Hillsdale College meeting that you were talking about, that's a discussion also of charter schools, right?
The discussion will be on the charter schools that Hillsdale has set up, the Barney schools. So we're going to discuss that and to find out a little bit about what's going on in New Hampshire and see if there's anything of that could be used here. So it's sort of an exploratory meeting.
Interesting.
Yep, I'm excited about it.
Sorry, I'm reading. Anne posted into the comments. The child shall take. So, Anne, is this the in response to the PSATs and the SAT question?
Yes, that's all that I could find in the, sorry, still writing. That's
No.
all that I could find in the rule that applied was that section. So it's, as it states.
That's
it-
home
it's-
education law, a home education annual evaluation requirement,
Right. Yeah.
but going the other direction.
As far as the PSATs being offered in the public, the SATs or PSATs being offered in the public school, and homeschoolers being protected to be able to join them and take them
Right.
there.
We can't take a PSAT at home. And you also can't take a PSAT easily at a different school because it's offered during the school day.
Right.
So that becomes but I can certainly understand with COVID, it is a more complicated.
Right. Yeah.
This
And
is-
it's, if maybe it falls under, as we were discussing in the rules, where if we're going to use whatever test the local district happens to be giving, just to give them enough of a heads up to say, oh, I would like to join you for this PSAT that you're offering this year. Let us know when it's happening, and giving them enough time to order a test and make whatever accommodations for space that they need to have, especially now. We'll have to do some more digging to find out if that's covered the way it would be covered for an annual evaluation.
In other states, it's not part of home education law. It's part of the law for school districts who contract with people like the College Board, who are outside people. They're not part of the state education system. So if they contract with them, they have to make it available for all. So, I mean, I think that's the place to look first. I haven't had
Okay, the regular school law. Okay.
Right, when if a school agrees to offer a test given by the College Board, College Board makes a small fortune off these, remember?
Yeah, yes, indeed.
So,
May I ask what's been done in the past with the PSAT? Have the homeschoolers been able to go into the schools?
yep,
Okay.
you just called ahead of time
Yeah.
because it is during the school day in a classroom. So you have to call and make arrangements and register through the College Board.
I
It's in
see.
fall, beginning of October.
Thank you.
Yeah, my own thoughts on the PSAT and the SAT. 193A, it seems to me, makes it pretty clear that if there's a test that's used in the local district, that homeschoolers can access this, and that there would be no charge for it. Maybe I'm reading too much into the law, but I don't think so. I really do think that 193A does cover the PSAT and the SAT issue. But I'm open to being persuaded otherwise. I don't think I know everything, but it does seem reasonably clear to me anyway. That's it.
Until very recently, a PSAT or an SAT would never be used as an achievement test. It's an aptitude test and not an achievement test. That's why there are SAT-2 achievement tests. So one could say that the law and the rules are sort of out of date, but I mean, it's really a different kind of thing. It's not a test used, or has never in the past, till this past year or so, been a test used by a school district to see where their students fall. It's part of the, let's have everybody practice SATs so they can all take SATs so they can all apply to college, because every child should go to college.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, anyway, all right.
It's interesting, yeah.
Okay, I'll do some more digging on that. The only thing I had, did I get everybody? Sorry. Susan Burke is here today as a, I guess, from the Unschooling New Hampshire, and hopefully will be our new nominee very soon. So thank you, Susan, for attending as a member of the public right now from Unschooling New Hampshire. I appreciate that. I don't have anything from the commissioner directly to add, in addition to what Chris has already said regarding wanting to put out a TA relatively soon and just really wanting to stay on top of districts in any way that he can help. So that was what he and I spoke about yesterday. We don't have any old business. So new business, let's really get into how we can help these high schoolers get credits for the efforts that they put in this year. And what we as HEAC can do to enact some change, or some recommendations anyway.
Well, I've actually talked with a few people about this. Years ago, it was all over the place. Then the schools were required to have a list of competencies in different subjects.
Right.
It's not easy to get to on the new revised DOE website, just because the navigation doesn't take you to everything. but if you search for it, you'll find the page.
Mhm.
However, it's a kind of unwieldy list of the student shall be able to do this, the student shall be able to do that. Say you had your child take Algebra 2 at home. You should be able to have some papers so that you could say, well, the child does know how to do this quadratic equation and graph this kind of thing, and here's the work. But parents did have to go in and show the work, but all along there were always districts. Alton used to be infamous. It's no longer exists. It's combined into Prospect Mountain now. They would always start homeschoolers as freshmen, no matter what, and it was a major problem. So the competencies are one thing. I think having a kid take a placement test in something like French or math, but what do you do about English? You know, that's a broader and more subjective type of thing. But I can also understand the school situation, particularly if they have somebody who's just out for 1 year and comes back in, and particularly when Katie was talking about things like GPA and you know, placement in class rank. I really never heard about parents being worried about that, but I guess I can see if you put your child in for the last couple of years of high school, I guess, you know, the GPA is obliterated from the first couple of years. I can see both sides, but I think school districts, even if they don't all have the same policy, they have to have a policy in place. It probably shouldn't be more rigorous for homeschoolers than for kids coming from another state, but it perhaps might be different. Like you might have to show paperwork or something like that. One thing we've dealt with is Exeter saying that all the classwork needs to be from an accredited school. One of our board members pointed out that, for example, the Farmington High School is not accredited. They decided to stop being accredited several years ago. And that's one reason, as a homeschooler with kids who are athletes who need to have algebra on their record, she just goes through North Atlantic Regional School and gets an accredited certification of her home education program rather than take them to the local school. So anyway, I think if they have a policy that's posted somewhere so a homeschooling parent knows, I will have to meet with them and show work, or my child will have to take a placement test, or those are my first thoughts.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm also reading in the comments that Katie suggested any CLEP test with a score of over 50 should count. Count any classes from an accredited online school. Is Velax accredited? I don't know the answer to that.
Yes.
It is?
I'm pretty
Yes.
sure it is.
Okay, because I've heard of some schools taking Velax classes and trying to bring them back to their brick and mortar high school, and the school saying this class will count as an elective, but not towards your GPA and not towards your credits.
Typically, they accept credits for the subject matter that the child took if that subject matter is not offered at their school. So if they have Algebra 1 at their school and they're taking Algebra 1 to get ahead so they can get more in their schedule, they will not necessarily get credit for Algebra 1.
Oh, that seems sort of
That's stupid.
not quite right.
No, it certainly doesn't feel good, does it?
No.
But and there's some, I think it's a fluid situation, but in past situations, they will give credit for the subject studied and mastered. However, if it's been offered at their school, it's all a dollars and cents issue, unfortunately.
Is it? Because how would, maybe I don't understand how it would make a difference if they're taking it online.
Well, Velax classes that a student takes are paid for by the state unless they're a full-time Velax student, and then they get the student's money. It follows the child.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay.
Well, and there are other online programs out there, you know, the parent pays money, but they get an accredited diploma or perhaps accredited classes. But as somebody who did all our homeschooling at home with books and and me teaching, I wouldn't want to have to jump through those hoops. And something like a CLEP test, perhaps. My kids, scored super high and went to very competitive colleges. So I might be having my hands tied.
Maybe there could be various options, like in a policy where you can test, or if you happen to use an accredited homeschool class provider, that could be another option.
Katie has things like that in the comments.
Yeah, she does.
Sarah was talking about public schools that aren't even accepting VLAX for classes not available in their district.
Yep. I had read that on GSHE as well. Katie had also said ideas, provide a log on the number of hours that have been spent on the subject.
That reminded me of what NARS does. I don't know if many of you are familiar with NARS. It's been around a long time. North Atlantic Regional High School. It's an outfit in Maine. Homeschoolers, particularly in the early days, could use them. You don't take classes through them, but they have you keep a logbook, have your plan of action at the beginning of the year, and they look at your materials at the end of the year. I think maybe you check in a few times a year. And they will use their accreditation to give you credit and an accredited diploma at the end of your child's homeschool career. So as long as they see they use this textbook, they completed this much algebra, they did this, they will qualify it. And that's been around for a while. But there aren't so many outfits that do that, I think, because now people just sign up for an online accredited distance learning program or something.
Right.
Another potential option would be for homeschool students to take advantage of the Learn Everywhere program. It does require them to develop a plan, and there is there are many steps to get it approved before they can actually move forward and get credit. But once it was approved, their local school district would have to accept that credit.
That addresses a question I wanted to ask, if Learn Everywhere could be used in that context. So the answer is it can, but you have to go through a procedure.
Correct. And I'm curious to see what happens in the future with remote learning. Let's take Exeter, where everything is remote. The application of a Learn Everywhere program versus taking the class in the school, and by virtue of it all being remote, the Learn Everywhere program seems to make more sense. So it will be interesting to see, because some schools are more welcome the program, some have great pushback, and it's based again on what they offer in their school and what it is that the student's trying to master. If any, that makes sense. But I think it's a potential avenue for students to gain credit.
Absolutely. And so once it's approved by Learn Everywhere, it has to be accepted by any high school.
Well, every child develops let's say they want to do something automotive. So they will find a sponsor at some sort of an automotive shop, or it could even be a technical college who develops a curriculum, and it establishes what things they're going to master in that curriculum. It's brought forward to the Department of Education. It's reviewed by a number of different groups before they then receive approval to move ahead with it. But once it gets that approval, then they have a right to go to their public school of record and get credit for it. The issue is, again, where there are credits that they could get from their public school of record versus get through Learn Everywhere. But the program it's in existence. It got grave pushback, but it's been passed, and it's anyone who wants to take advantage of it can now. But it's a step-by-step process.
Okay.
So let's say you wanted to do something, you probably couldn't take advantage of it till next semester, because you'd have to develop this and get it approved. And So is Chris Bond still with us, or is he gone?
Yeah, he's
sort
still
of around.
He
One
might
thing
speak to this too. I can,
One thing about
some backup.
Learn Everywhere or even signing up with NARS, they're all things that you have to sort of plan ahead of time. And I suppose they also fall in that category of us advising parents who know they want to go back to the public school to work with their schools. But way back when, there was the situation of people would homeschool and then suddenly life changed or something happened and the children needed to go into high school. So say I'm at home and I'm teaching my kid algebra with Saxon, which is pretty rigorous, and they're doing very well and getting through it, and they're doing something else. Then, for whatever reason, now we decide to go to high school. I guess I would, could there be a list of options? I guess like we're seeing in the chat, if the school said, well, could they take a CLEP test? Could they take a placement test? Could they?
Most
there really
schools
needs something in
don't.
place for those who can't plan ahead, who aren't planning ahead to not homeschool, I guess.
Yeah. Has it not been your experience that schools don't provide a test to check proficiency?
It's always been way long ago it was awful. Then it was okay. Schools were required to have these competency lists, and parents went in with material to show the school and have a meeting. Depending on the parent, it would probably go better or worse. But I think what we're seeing now is a sudden change because there were so many high schoolers homeschooling for a while and not homeschooling. And I suppose, to be completely honest, we don't send in an evaluation every year. So it's not as though a participating agency says, oh, here I see the test scores and things are going along every year. They could perhaps be wondering, perhaps the family themselves are not having as rigorous an evaluation. So they can't just trust you saying, well, we've done Algebra 2. Well, maybe you only did half the Algebra 2 the kids did at the local high school, or then maybe you did a year and a half's worth. So I love the things where you plan ahead, and people who have, student athletes or people who want to take advantage of something unique like you can and Learn Everywhere, different things than just the standard academic subjects. But what do you do for the standard academic subjects? What do you do for English?
right. A read like assessments and Katie is saying in the chat, math and foreign language seem easy enough to test into. Credit for English and social sciences and sciences seem harder to prove. For her friend, the SAU would absolutely not accept her son's credits for anything. That sounds like a really hard situation. And she says she's also counseled homeschoolers not to worry both about the diploma or class ranking in the end, because we all know colleges accept homeschoolers, but for families only doing 1 year of home education and then 3 years of public schooling, but being denied a diploma, that's a lot for a parent to accept. And so I think that's where I think a lot of kids are going to fall into this coming year if they do go back. Mike, do you have any insight into this?
Yeah, it is, my understanding it is up to the district
right
to make those determinations of what's acceptable credit.
Mm-hmm.
I end up having a lot of conversations when kids transfer in from other schools and trying to determine, is this course like the courses we offer? Which one does it best match up to? Where do we place them in an honors level or that kind of stuff? And it just amounts to gathering some information.
Okay. We
have had homeschool, so I guess I can only speak to our district process because it does change by each district. Mm-hmm. If a homeschooling parent could have a third party speak to what they understand to be as credit, I think that gives it more validity.
Okay.
That's what a lot of these suggestions are. But it's a hard decision because it's not always a clean fit.
Right.
For what the school has to offer and what the student has learned, even whether it's above or below what the school offers. I will say the CLEP tests are a great opportunity for pretty inexpensive money, and they're college level credits. Hard to argue with that at a high school level course. If you're, if you pass the college level long essay course and you have 6 English credits, it's hard to say you don't belong in senior English or something like that, or you can show the work on the books you've read and the responses you've had to those, or essays you've written, or things like that. So if you have time to prepare, which helps, and you can kind of put together a plan, it just shows a kind of a more, I guess in a sense, you're trying to impress the guidance counselor and the guidance director that your education is rigorous and serious. Right. And so if you can show that thought and planning went into the information you're presenting, I think it helps. I'm sure there's biases, and some folks just don't trust a homeschooling grade or record or comment, and I'm not sure how to fight that other than to get some third party to verify.
Right. For this year, specifically addressing, kids who are only going to homeschool for this year, to get ahead of any sort of problem, do you have advice on what we as HEAC could do to recommend to get ahead of this, I guess?
Yeah, I think the only thing I can think of is to start asking questions now. If a parent is planning on returning their child back to high school, if you can ask ahead of time, what's the evidence I need to show completion or competencies achieved, and what will happen with placement? Will I come in as a freshman? Will the student be a sophomore? So inquire as to what the requirements are ahead of time would probably be a good idea. Okay. So maybe a pre-meeting with guidance.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Mike, do you think most schools have a policy that's, say, written in place?
I think so.
Okay.
It's pretty common for private school students to come in and for there to be questions about credits. Even students will get sent out of district to a private school by the public district, go to a private entity, and then come back after a year for special education and things like that. So they need to have some kind of written policy about.
So that's not something we need to ask them to do. That's already been done.
I would expect that it's done. It would be really really difficult to imagine how they handle that without a written policy. It would just be pretty arbitrary.
Right.
Well,
And maybe it appears like that. Maybe that is the case in some districts.
maybe I should address this question then that one of our members or inquirers was asking about Exeter, where they said, we will only accept credit if it's from an accredited institution. The school, I guess, has a right to say that.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe we could just advise the parent to try to see if taking a CLEP test or something else will help them, or meeting with a third party. Those are the only things we can do, but we can't say the school can't do that. I guess one of our board members said, well, do they require the credits from somebody moving from out of state to be from an accredited school? And I always thought all public schools were accredited, but now I hear, oh, Farmington isn't accredited. I don't know, does that happen in other states?
Yeah. Well, and then there are private schools that aren't accredited.
Yeah.
Also, it doesn't mean they're
in other words,
poor
is that
quality.
unfair to homeschoolers to say that they'll only take credit if it's from an accredited school, accredited course?
It does. I think in practice it becomes unfair. But I don't know how you'd work around that other than to bring it before their school board, because I believe it is a local policy.
Okay.
Wow,
You
I had
know,
no idea that that high school was so much like college. I remember trying to transfer credits in college being a headache, and I didn't realize high school had gotten that way.
Michelle made a statement in the chat about, I don't know if you see that.
Mhm.
I wasn't aware of that. So maybe it is not up to the district. I just thought that was the situation.
So there's a couple points that Michelle have made. That a few years ago she worked with a military family who homeschooled, and when in New Hampshire, they wanted to go to the local public school, and the new school refused to enter the child as an 11th grader and insisted on placing him as a 9th grader, which sounds awfully redundant for that poor kid. But then
Yes.
also Michelle said that the SAU policies re home education are typically in policy IHBG. And sometimes that includes references to re-enrolling in public schools. Other policies address graduation requirements and transfer credits. And those policies are usually very open-ended, which empowers the principals themselves with a great deal of discretion regarding whether or not they award the credits, which I think would also speak to what you were saying, Mike, with just trying to impress, the guidance counselor or the principals of the schools. And if you think having a third party available to speak to the validity of the homeschooling program would help impress principals, I think that's something we could absolutely recommend to our homeschooling families for the year, in addition to the CLEP tests and the other things we've discussed.
Right. Yeah, I think this whole COVID situation gives special urgency to the concept that, look, for most subjects, there ought to be a test available, because I think there are tests. It's a matter of whether they get accepted in the district. There ought to be a test available to determine whether or not this student actually has understood this subject. This is something we've been looking at for a long time now, and we haven't really gotten a lot of traction on it. But I think so many more students are affected by this in this school year. Really, I think something has to happen in terms of some objective standard, which, a test, a lot of times anyway, they're reasonably objective.
Mm-hmm.
A test would solve that issue. And, speaking of English and social studies, there's a tremendous variety of what is discussed in class in these subjects from one school district to another. And yet, if a student goes from one district in New Hampshire to another, they're not going to throw out his social studies credits that he got in Nashua when he moves to Wolfboro. So even though it's true that in social studies and English, for example, it's maybe a bit harder to come up with a test. It may be a bit harder, but really, I think it's far from impossible. And there's especially this year, because of this mess with COVID, it does give special urgency. So I'm going to shut up now because I think I've said what I have to say.
You're not wrong. I mean, it absolutely does give it special urgency to attempt to really kind of get this settled. And I think it'll have long-lasting benefits if we can help out. Steph, I see your question. What is IHBG? Michelle sorry, it's Katie. So IHBG is usually their homeschool policy. I don't know what the IHBG actually stands for. Maybe, Michelle, do you know what the actual acronym stands for? Or maybe,
yeah, IHBG is just the random alpha code that they use for different policies. They'll have 3 or 4 letters that are used to identify various policies of all sorts that they have in their handbook. IHBG just happens to be the one that most districts have for referring to home education.
Oh, so it's not specific to home education.
It is IHBG.
Oh, okay.
If you look that up in most SAU policies that are online,
Yes.
that's the one that is homeschooling. And I don't know this, but I suspect that many of them, because I've looked at over 24 of them in recent weeks, most of them have almost identical language. So chances are good that their language came from the New Hampshire School Board Association at one point or another. So I think that may also point to why the policies haven't been updated since 2012. I mean, they give their members, the school boards that are members, one of the services the New Hampshire School Board provides to their members is template policy language that they can choose to adopt or wholesale or make amendments to. But that's kind of how their policies originate.
They also take each of the policy categories and they grade them. So the reason that policy may not have changed for a long time is that it's not considered a high risk or a high, I can't remember the terminology. I used to be in the policy committee of my old school board, but they supply you with language, as she said. You can adopt it or not, but there are some policies that are required by law and others that are optional. And then they're rated as to the importance. So I don't remember where that fell in the ranking. But she's absolutely correct about the language.
I know that 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, we discovered that the School Boards Association policy, like it's not a mandatory policy, it's like a suggested policy. We discovered that it was definitely out of date, and we contacted the School Boards Association, and within about a month and a half, they had corrected their version. Now, the other thing that can be happening is that even though the School Boards Association has a corrected version, that some school districts still have not corrected their out-of-date policies.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Anne, I think you're muted.
Each school should have their own policy committee as required. And if you're a member of the School Boards Association, they send you regular updates on policies, but he's probably correct because everything's imperfect. And there's some that slip through. I know that we had policies that were 20 years old that had never been re-reviewed until. So it's entirely possible that that policy is 8 years or older.
Absolutely, because it hasn't been a big deal until now. So, okay, so we have a couple policies to take a look at. Katie posted here in the chat, I believe some short policies should be proposed to every single SAU for approval on accepting high school credit. Because if COVID continues into next year, this could, quote, save students from feeling like the public school is their only option. CLEP offers an extremely long list of subject tests. And so, yeah, I think it would be nice to propose some sort of, policy. That would be good. I think for now, and obviously anyone step in here, correct me if you think this is the wrong direction to take. I'm thinking for now, we should individually do outreach to our own groups and say, please reach out to your local school district, your local principal, and do it as soon as you can. If you are homeschooling just for this year, or if you know that at any point you might have a high schooler who's returning to their actual building, please reach out to them, get in touch with the principal, get in touch with the guidance counselor, and find out what you need to do to make sure that your student will get credit for all the work they are doing this year. I would probably recommend that they get something in writing, some sort of plan that's agreed on by both parties that could be referenced later on when the student is trying to return to school. I think we should do that just as an outreach from HEAC, from this discussion onward. I think I would like to touch base with the commissioner and see what he thinks we could, oh, excuse me. Mike said, good suggestion, get it in writing, an MOU of sorts. What's the M in MOU? No, an
A
IOU.
memorandum of understanding.
Ah, thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So it's not an IOU.
So in light of that, the process of submitting for a Learn Everywhere program, there are steps, and it's a laid out process. That same process could be used. You could just lift it and use those steps, use it as your template to get agreement between the public school and the family, the instructor. Again, it just saves you some time.
Okay.
Could lift that process.
Lift the verbiage right off the Learn Everywhere program. Okay, so that's another option that we can also give to our homeschooling
because the whole process has gone through the legislature. So you've got some hurdles in terms of proposing rules to make credits be accepted happily.
Yes. Yes, so. We do. So, okay, wonderful.
I wonder if when we advise people how to speak with their principal guidance counselor, if we should look at this a little bit the way we advise people when kids are applying to college, rather than saying, what would you want from me, which leaves them sort of in the mindset of thinking of what hoops we can make the homeschoolers jump through, offer them things first. So the reason this applies to, say, college applications, if they say, we want one letter from an English or a social studies teacher and one from a math or science teacher. And then I have to contact the college and say, well, I do all of those. So how about if, and I offer, how about if their theater coordinator does it and their music thing and their, so if we encourage parents to offer, I could have my child take the CLEP test. I could meet with a third-party evaluator to go over would that be helpful? In other words, you're not asking the school district what they want. Of course, if they have a policy in place, that's one thing, but you're also offering some other things. Offer first.
Right.
To get them on your side. It makes it seem like you're willing to offer some options, which also might come off the Learn Everywhere list of ways to make a program seem valid.
Right. And I'm on the Learn Everywhere site on the Department of Education. Where would I specifically find that link with the verbiage of where we could plug that into?
That's a great question. I can reach out to our secretary and send that to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then I will send it out to everyone. Right now, what I have seems to be a bit more of a Q&A, but I'll just post it into the chat. Stephanie, those are really good suggestions, because when you do give the schools more options, I feel like that when they feel like we're willing to work with them and kind of do whatever it takes to get our high schoolers credits accepted, they will probably be more.
And they often say yes, because you're throwing out some nice, useful options.
Right. Yeah.
Otherwise, they're racking their brains trying to think.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a great idea.
So, Kitty, what you're going to send around is a form, kind of a form question for parents addressing their school district.
Yeah, I would like all the homeschoolers to kind of reach out to their school districts, to reach out to their homeschooled high schoolers and let them know if they were planning to return their high schoolers to school at any point, to reach out to their local schools and have meetings and have a few suggestions. Here's what we could do. The plan, the verbiage that Anne had suggested is going to come from Learn Everywhere.
Okay.
Or it could come from Learn Everywhere, because that will save homeschoolers a whole lot of effort in trying to redesign something. If you pull the verbiage from something that's already been approved, then you've got a better chance of it making an impact. Okay. It's almost like having that third party there to validate it right at the beginning.
Great. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
That does.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I would like to, I think, reach out to the commissioner and get his ideas on how we could effectively recommend something either to the School Boards Association maybe, or to at least to local schools as far as, hey, this is going to be a big issue coming up next year. The Home Education Advisory Council would like to work with you and help our high schoolers be able to come back into school where they need to be, rather than, make the transition as easy as possible. So I'd like to reach out to the commissioner and pick his brain on that in his copious amounts of spare time. Does anyone have other avenues that we think could be useful to explore in addition to getting the commissioner's opinion? I don't know, Chris, if you have any input on this from a legal standpoint.
He's on the phone.
Yeah, probably. That's okay. Or if anyone else has any suggestions on next steps to take. And if not, we can just.
Well, I mean, we could mention a place like NARS. I hate to give all the advertising. There's one other. I think maybe Kobe Academy does the same thing.
I haven't heard that one.
Where they'll just take your homeschool program and accredit it at the end of the year if you have met all the requirements. But I'm not sure about that. I can look into it.
Is there a name for that? Like back accrediting or something?
I think it's maybe just accrediting homeschool programs.
Okay, after they've been completed.
Okay. We've got it listed, right?
And I know Granite State Home Educators has an awful lot on our website too that talks about, here I can.
Another avenue would be for families to check what their school of record district's policies are on ELOs, extended learning opportunities.
Okay.
Again, some schools that have embraced this and have policies in place, and some haven't. It's usually an economic thing. Wealthier districts have more money to throw at these things, less wealthy districts don't. So,
right.
But that would be just another place for parents to get empowering information about tools they have available to them.
Excellent. Thank you. That's another great avenue to use. I did put the one link I could find for Learn Everywhere, and then I will also put in there, oh, there's the NARS, Michelle Lavelle just put in the NARS link into the chat. I will put some information that Granite State Home Educators has on the website for getting some high school credit, and all of these can be distributed to whomever needs them. Great, so we'll check into ELO policies too. Thank you. All right, any other suggestions on next steps to help out our high schoolers for next year? No? All right. If we could all just, when we reach out this month, kind of come back with any reports that we've heard or anything we have run into, that would be really helpful. I would appreciate that. And then we can all kind of help each other for the high schoolers for next year. And also, if anyone hears anything further about current homeschoolers or new homeschoolers who are attempting to get some sort of services from their districts and that not working for whatever reason, also send that my way so I can compile lists. And Steph, you had really great bullet points at the beginning regarding the TA. Do you mind if I ask you to just throw some bullet points?
I'll write something. Can I share that with the group for thoughts, or just send it to you, Kitty?
I would say if you want to share it to the group and include Attorney Bond on that.
Yep.
And then I'll say we have, this evening and maybe until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning to comment on it. And then after 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, we'll assume that Attorney Bond will take take whatever he needs out of them.
Whatever.
Awesome. Thank you, Steph. I appreciate that. And now we have several members of the public here who have been very helpful, and I really do appreciate everyone attending. Is there anything we did not cover, Anne or Angela or Susan, that you would all like to bring up?
I have nothing further. Thank you for asking, though.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for being here. And Angela, no? Okay. All right. Yes.
I'm going to try to meet with someone from the Manchester School District and someone from the Bedford School District to find out about their policies in regards to these things we've discussed today.
Okay.
So that should have a report for you by the next meeting.
Wonderful. That would be great. Thank you. And, feel free to call me during those meetings or let me know when you're meeting with them if you need, another voice.
Okay.
George, I would bet most districts have all their school board policies posted on their website. So you might want to just start there.
Yes, that would be a great place to start.
Yeah.
And once I've looked at that, then I can, if I can get an appointment. But you're right, walking in there cold turkey is not the brightest idea on earth. So yeah, I was planning on looking at the online policies.
Right. And I know Michelle had said she's had a lot of luck looking up the specific acronym, well, it's not an acronym, but IHBG, for whatever reason, happens to be where the homeschool policies are under.
From what I've seen, not everything shows up under IHBG. There are some things, unless these things just aren't addressed, because I've looked at the IHBG stuff on a number of occasions in different districts, and maybe some districts just don't address these questions. That's possible too. But anyway, I know what you mean.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything? All right, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
All right, motion to adjourn.
A second.
All right, George made a motion, and was that Jen who seconded?
Yeah.
Okay, Jen seconded. We will, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you all very much for being here today. I really appreciate your time. As of right now, unless anything fantastical arises, our next meeting will be on November 19th. I moved it up a week so that it would not interfere with Thanksgiving. I've sent out the link already. And as always, reach out to me if you run into anything that you feel like I can help you with, and have happy Halloween.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye, everybody.
You well.
Bye.
Everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, how do I get out of here?